Hello my friends and welcome back to my channel. In today's video I will show you step by step how I made this giant dandelion. From the first little puff to the final giant flower. There are many ways to make dandelion puffs. The most popular method is using paper or crepe paper. But for giant dandelion like this, it could take a few days. Cutting, gluing, shaping every tiny piece one by one, and in the end it will be quite fragile. So today I will show you the faster method I used to make my giant dandelion. And the best part, these puffs are waterproof, which makes this flower perfect for outdoor photo shoots, events and magical garden moments. Let's start with the materials.
And yes, this is actually Christmas tinsel garland. It works amazingly well for fluffy dandelion puffs. I am using the white one, 7 cm or about 2.75 inches wide. I found it on Amazon and I will leave all the links in video description. I also found this version at Hobby Lobby. It's beautiful too, but the strands are a little longer and not quite as fluffy, and it has a rainbow shimmer. Since I may need more tinsel to make a set of dandelions, I decided to go with Amazon one because it's easier to reorder. Next, I am using a floral foam ball, 5.6 inches or 14.2 cm in diameter. And of course, plenty of 12-inch bamboo skewers. Make sure they are pointed because we will be using them to attach all of our puffs to the foam ball, a glass and some brown paint. We are going to dye the bottom part of the skewers to make them look more like real dandelion seed stems. This little detail makes a big difference and gives the finished dandelion a much more realistic look. Scissors, roller, hot glue, and my personal lifesaver for this project is silicone finger protectors. Trust me, after making hundreds of puffs, your fingers will definitely thank you. I also have a small piece of apple noodle. This part is optional, but I'll be using it later as a base for the greenery. For the green elements, I am using green crepe paper 180 GSM. If you don't have crepe paper, green cardstock works too. And for the stem, I am using a flexible pipe diameter 20 mm. But before we start, take a quick look through your bamboo skewers. Some of them may be bent, cracked or slightly damaged. Don't throw those away, we will actually use some of them later when attaching the finished dandelion to the stem. Now let's start by coloring our skewers. To get a rich, natural brown color, I ended up using almost an entire bottle of paint. Since bamboo skewers are very light in color, you will need a fairly concentrated mixture. I am adding just a little water, but not too much. Before you begin, place some paper nearby to protect your work surface. I had some leftover packing paper from deliveries, so that's what I am using today. Now let's slowly dip the skewers into the paint. Keep in mind that the paint level will rise as you add more skewers to the glass. To help you follow all my steps, I will mark the paint level with a marker, so you can see how it changes as we add more skewers. Right now I have about 4.5 cm or almost 2 inches of paint in the glass. Let's continue dipping the rest of our skewers. One thing I really like about doing them all at once is that they end up with a very consistent painted lens. Just be careful and work slowly. Once they are dipped, slowly lift them back out of the glass and give them a moment for the excess paint to drip off. Carefully lay the skewers out on the paper, and now you have two options. You can let them air dry for about a few hours, or you can speed things up with a heat gun. Since I'm in a hurry to finish filming this tutorial for you, I am definitely choosing option number 2. And I wanted to share one important tip. When you're drying the skewers with a heat gun, start at the bottom of the painted section and slowly work your way upward. This helps prevent the paint from running or dripping down the skewers and keeps the color nice and even. And here they are, completely dry. Now we can finally start making the puffs. And honestly, the hardest part might be finding the end of the garland. I am sure you probably spotted it right away in the video, but when you're holding this giant fluffy garland in your hands, it's a little bit more challenging. Let me show you exactly how I make each puff. Start by cutting a piece about 1.5 inches or 4 centimeters long. I wouldn't recommend going any smaller than that, because the puffs will look a little thin and sparse. My favorite size is somewhere between 1.5 and 2 inches. And before we start gluing, don't forget your silicone finger protectors. Trust me, we are going to be making a lot of this, and your fingers will thank you later. Add a small drop of hot glue to the tip of the skewer and carefully wrap the tinsel around it, as I am showing in the video. Once the tinsel is wrapped around the skewer, it will look a little vertical at first. Now gently press it down and shape it with your fingers, almost like you're creating a flat little snowflake. And here it is, our fluffy dandelion parachute, puff, fluff, how do you call this? The first one is done. Only about 199 more to go. And now comes the magical part of the video, where suddenly a whole bunch of the puffs appears in just few seconds. And a little tip: if you don't have silicone finger protectors, just try to use a low temperature glue gun to protect your fingertips from accidental burns. We are going to repeat this process many times, so let's make it as comfortable as possible. And here is my first little bunch, 10 puffs. Honestly, these first 10 were pretty quick, and for a moment I thought, okay, maybe this wouldn't take that long. But of course we need many more. So let's move into even more magical moment where a whole little flock of puffs appears in less than a minute. In real life, this took a couple of hours. But honestly, one of my favorite parts here might be finally vacuuming up all these tiny tinsel leftovers.
The leftover trim, I'm going to save this for the next dandelion, because I don't want to stop at just one. I want to create a whole bunch set of giant dandelions, and I think it's going to look absolutely magical. But before I show you how many I made, let me know in comments how many puffs do you think it takes to make one giant dandelion. I love reading your comments, so let's see who gets the closest. So here they are. Bunch number 1, 20 puffs. Bunch number 2, 30 more. Then we have another little bunch, and yes, there is more. One more. And finally, the biggest bunch. So after counting every single puff, the grand total is 228 dandelion puffs. And now the biggest question is, will 228 be enough to create one giant dandelion? And honestly, I'm not sure yet, but there is only one way to find out. So let's move to the next step to start assembling our giant dandelion. Our foam ball, and for the stem I'm going to use flexible pipe 20 mm in diameter. But before we start, I wanted to share one of the biggest mistakes when people make creating giant dandelions. Most people attach a stem directly into the foam ball. Technically, yes, it works. However, later you might need a taller or smaller stem, or replace or reuse it with another flower. And when stem is permanently attached to the foam ball, to your dandelion, changing it, replacing can damage or even destroy your finished dandelion. So I recommend to go with connector system. This way you can reuse this stem for your another flowers.
Here is my foam ball. Next, I am taking about 10-11 leftover skewers. These are the ones that didn't make it into the puff collection. Before we glue anything together, let's do a quick test. Take your future stem, pipe 20 mm diameter, and make sure this bundle of skewers will fit inside. Next, trim the skewers to the same length. Mine are about 20 cm long. Add a tiny drop of hot glue to hold them together. Then wrap the bundle with the tape. One important tip: leave the ends unwrapped. This will help them grip the foam ball much better later on. You can also use a wire or thinner pipe for this connector, but I already had plenty of leftover skewers, so that's what I'm using today. Once everything is wrapped, let's do one more test fit. Make sure your connector still slides easily into the pipe. Mine fits just perfectly. Now let's move on to the foam ball. Find the least attractive side, maybe a dent, a damaged area, or any uneven spot that won't be visible later. Using scissors, carefully create a small hole in the foam. Add some glue inside and then insert your connector. My foam ball is a bright green color, but if you'd like a more natural look, you can paint yours beige or lighter color. I decided to leave mine as it is because I just wanted to share the tutorial with you as soon as possible. Plus, the most of the foam ball will be covered with puffs anyway, so the color wouldn't be very noticeable at the end. And of course, adding a little more glue for the extra security. And just like that, the base of our giant dandelion is ready. Now we are moving to the part I've been waiting for the most. Finally, we can start assembling the dandelion. We've built it one puff at a time. I am starting with my first cup, which has about 30 puffs inside. And honestly, this first little bunch disappeared so quickly, but look how pretty it already looks. The first little flock of dandelion puffs is attached. And now let's keep going. At this stage I am trying to place the puffs evenly around the foam ball and keep the shape light and airy, just like a real dandelion seed head. At this point I had to stop for a second just to look at it, because it was finally starting to feel like a real giant dandelion. It looks so light, fluffy and magical already, and honestly this is the moment when I got really excited. And here we are with my last bunch of puffs. The last one. This is the moment when I started to feel like maybe 228 puffs might be not enough for one huge dandelion. But we will see. Near the bottom I am leaving about 1 to 1.5 inches empty for the dandelion greenery. My dandelion is already so fluffy and beautiful, even though only half of it is finished. I couldn't resist trying it on like a crown for a second, and honestly, there is something magical about it. Maybe after I finish this dandelion, I will have to make a fairy tale dandelion crown too. But first let's finish this one. With every new puff, the dandelion gets bigger and a little harder to hold. The easiest way is to gently slide your fingers between the skewers, so you can hold the foam ball without crushing the puffs. And we are almost there. It's already so huge and fluffy, and I still have around 10 puffs left. Now I really need your opinion. From what you see on the video, do you think 228 puffs are enough, or would you add some more? While I'm deciding whether this dandelion needs more puffs, let's make the greenery for the base. I prepared this little template for the dandelion sepals, the green leafy part under the flower head. Also, if you would like to support my work and help me create more tutorials like this, you can join my Patreon. I would be truly grateful, and you will be able to download templates for all my YouTube tutorials. For the greenery, we will need 8 small leaves. I am folding the crepe paper into 4 layers, so I can cut several pieces at once. Cut along the sides and around the template. Then repeat the same with second piece of paper. Now we have all 8 pieces ready. I will show you the shaping on the first one. Gently twist the top of the sepal, working down towards the middle. Then open it back up, stretch a little and use your fingernails to create soft lines and texture, as I am showing in the video. The first sepal is ready. Now let's repeat the same process with the rest of them. To make it faster, you can shape 3 or even 4 at the same time, just like I am doing here. And now all the sepals are ready. Next, take a piece of pool noodle and cut about 1 inch. Here it is, a small round piece about 1 inch. Now we are going to glue our sepals onto this little base. I will attach them in 2 layers. First, 4 sepals around the side. Then I will add remaining 4 on the top, as you can see in the video. The first 4 sepals are attached. Now let's add the second layer in space between. Gently stretch the bottom of each sepal and bend it slightly, as I'm showing in the video. This will help it sit better on top of the pool noodle piece and also give us a stronger connection later when we attach it to the foam ball. And our dandelion greenery is ready. Now let's make the stem. For the stem I'm using a flexible pipe with 20 mm diameter. You can leave it white, spray paint it with any color, any shade of green, or wrap it with a paper the same color you used for greenery. I think wrapping it makes everything look more finished and harmonious. I had a leftover piece a little longer than 30 centimeters, and I am cutting it into a strip about 1 inch wide. This size makes it much easier to wrap around the pipe. Since this is crepe paper, it stretches. For the stem, we will use it in stretched position. First, let's cover the end of the pipe, as I am showing in the video, and then continue wrapping around the pipe to create a whole stem. Cut a small piece of green paper and glue it onto the end, folding it slightly inside to hide the cut edge. Then take a 1 inch strip and place it at a slight angle, so it wraps around the pipe diagonally. Add a little hot glue and start wrapping step by step, just like I am showing in the video. Keep the paper slightly stretched as you go and try to overlap each layer just a little bit. This way the stem will look neat, smooth and much more natural. And here is my giant dandelion with 228 puffs. It's already huge, fluffy, and honestly, I am so happy with how it looks. But before I decide whether it needs a few more puffs, let's finish the base and make it look more like a real dandelion. Finally, the last step, let's attach the greenery. I have this stand from one of my giant orchid installations, but today it's helping us with our giant dandelion. Apply hot glue around the edge of the greenery piece and carefully slide it underneath the dandelion, like I am showing in the video. It's almost like putting a quite big bead onto a string, a very, very large bead. And here is what the bottom of the dandelion looks like. And honestly, this little greenery piece changes everything. Now let's attach it to the stem. The connector slides right into the pipe, and this is exactly why I wanted to keep these two pieces separate. If I ever want a taller stem, shorter stem, or need to transport the dandelion, I can easily take it apart and adjust it later. The dandelion already looks so beautiful, but since I still had a little bit of tinsel left, I couldn't resist doing a little experiment. When I looked at the dandelion up close and held it in my hands, I could still see a few tiny gaps that seemed to be asking for just a few more puffs. So I thought, why not? So I made a few more puffs. This way, in the same tutorial, you will see how the dandelion transforms from 228 puffs into even a bigger and fluffier version. Since this is an experiment, let's remember. Here is our giant dandelion with 228 puffs, and my plan is to add just 22 more. Not too many, just enough to fill some of those little gaps. So in total we will have 250 puffs. And here it is, the 250 puff version. Already looking a little fuller and fluffier. As for me, let me know in comments what do you think about this. At this point I started wondering, what if we add 50 more? I still had some tinsel left. I could still see a few tiny gaps, and honestly I was really curious to see what this giant dandelion would look like with a total of 300 puffs. And here it is, the 300 puff version. Personally, I would say that 300 puffs is probably the maximum I would use for this size foam ball. Of course, your final number may be a little different, because it all depends on how closely you place your puffs, how fluffy you make them, and how full you want your finished dandelion to look. Now you can see all three versions in one video. This is where we started, 228 puffs. Then we have 250 puffs. And finally 300 puffs. Can you see the difference? And most importantly, which one is your favorite? Let me know in the comments. I am really curious to see which version becomes the winner of this giant dandelion experiment.
Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video and maybe even feel inspired to create your own giant dandelion. I already took mine out for a little test photo shoot, and honestly it looked absolutely magical. The photo shoot didn't last very long because the rainy season decided to return. But now I have even a bigger idea. I recently ordered a beautiful cottagecore and Renaissance-inspired dress, and as soon as it arrives, I want to create a whimsical fairy tale photo shoot in the forest with this giant dandelion. So if you are not subscribed yet, make sure to follow my channel, because there are more giant flowers tutorials, behind the scenes projects and magical photoshoot ideas coming very soon. See you in the next video. Bye bye!